The boy who didn't leave footprints. Snow has a sound most people never notice. It isn't silence. It's a soft, suffocating hush, like the world holding its breath. That night, the snow wasn't supposed to fall at all. I remember that clearly, because winter makes me obsessive. I check forecasts like a nervous tick. Temperatures, wind chill, precipitation percentages. I knew them all. The sky had been clear when I sat down with a book in my bedroom. Then, without warning, the world outside turned white. It was as if someone flipped a switch. By the time I looked out the window, snow was already piling up on the ground, thick and fast. The streetlights glowed like they were underwater. I felt that familiar pull in my chest, the same one that always shows up when snow falls at night. I don't hike. I don't camp. But snow does something to me. 20 minutes later, I was driving toward the trailhead just outside town. The forest there isn't deep wilderness, but it's close enough. A place where the trees crowd together, where sound disappears quickly. The parking lot was empty. No tire tracks, no footprints. Perfect. I stepped out of my car and stood still for a moment, letting the snow land on my coat, my hair, my eyelashes. The air felt heavy, insulated. My breath sounded too loud. I started walking. I didn't follow a plan. I just kept going until the trail faded into trees and the world shrank down to nothing but snow, branches, and my own footsteps. After maybe 20 minutes, I stopped. That's when I heard it. "Hi." A child's voice. It was so out of place that my brain rejected it outright. I stood frozen, listening. Snow continued falling. No movement, no footsteps. I told myself it was auditory pareidolia. Wind. My imagination. Then it came again. "Hi." Closer this time, or maybe farther. I couldn't tell. The sound didn't belong to any direction. It was like it existed everywhere at once. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just dark trunks and white ground. My heart started pounding hard enough to hurt. I was already turning back toward the trail when the voice spoke again. "Up here, you're bad at looking." I looked up without thinking. He was sitting in a tree. A little boy, maybe 8 or 9, perched casually on a thick branch at least 20 feet off the ground. He was bundled in a winter coat and gloves, legs swinging slightly. He smiled when our eyes met. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by confusion. "How did you get up there?" I asked. He tilted his head. His smile widened, stretching too far across his face. "That part's boring," he said. "Watch this instead." Something felt wrong then. Not fear exactly, more like realization. There were no footprints. The snow had been falling long enough that even my own tracks were starting to soften. Around the base of the tree, the snow was untouched. Perfect. Smooth. He hadn't climbed it recently. He stood up on the branch, arms loose at his sides. "Don't," I said. He leaned backward and fell. I screamed. The sound of his body hitting the ground was wet and final. I ran toward him, heart in my throat, already bracing myself for what I'd see. But he stood up. Just stood up. Like he'd tripped, not fallen 30 feet. Then he ran, laughing. I chased him. I don't know why. That decision still haunts me. Maybe shock. Maybe adrenaline. Maybe curiosity is more dangerous than fear. His footprints appeared as he ran. Small, shallow impressions darting between trees. I followed them, slipping, gasping for breath. His laughter echoed, overlapping itself, coming from everywhere. Then something slammed into my back. I hit the ground hard. Snow filled my mouth. Pain exploded across my shoulders. He was on me. Not heavy. Sharp. His fingers clawed at my neck, my face. His nails were cold and rigid, slicing skin. He screamed inches from my ear, a high animal sound that didn't belong in any human throat. I fought blindly, screaming, flailing, until I managed to roll and throw him off me. He landed, laughed again, and vanished into the trees. I didn't follow. Blood soaked my collar. My hands shook so badly I couldn't tell how badly I was hurt. I wrapped my hat around my neck and stumbled back toward the trail, sobbing, slipping, barely aware of anything except the need to survive. The next clear memory I have is fluorescent lights, an ambulance, questions, hands pressing gauze into my skin. The police searched the area. They found my footprints. Only mine. No child, no tracks, no sign anyone else had been there. I went back days later. The forest was untouched, smooth snow, silent trees, no footprints. Sometimes, when it snows at night, I still hear laughter buried under the hush. And I don't walk anymore, because some things only appear when the world is quiet enough to listen. Something was standing between the trees. Snowstorms make liars out of distance. Things look closer than they are. Sounds arrive late. Movement feels wrong. I learned that the night I walked home during the blackout. The power went out around 7 p.m., right as the storm reached its worst. No lights, no heat, no signal. My phone was already dying, and I lived alone in a rented house at the edge of town. When the outage passed 2 hours, I decided to walk to my sister's place. She lived just under a mile away. Normally I would have driven, but the road had vanished beneath snowdrifts. Walking felt safer. That was my first mistake. The storm had slowed, but the snow was deep and clean, untouched. Every step I took sounded too loud, like I was announcing myself to something hiding nearby. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something strange. My footprints behind me were disappearing. Not slowly, not naturally. They were just gone. I stopped and turned around. The snow behind me was smooth, like I had never walked there at all. But the snow in front of me still crunched under my boots. I told myself it was wind, snowfall, panic. I kept walking. That's when I saw the shape between the trees. It wasn't moving, just standing there. At first I thought it was a fence post or a broken tree trunk, but it was too straight, too deliberate. As I got closer, I realized it was tall, taller than any person I'd ever seen. Long limbs, narrow shoulders, no face. Just a blank, pale surface where a face should be. I stopped. It didn't move. The silence felt aggressive, like pressure in my ears. I raised my flashlight with shaking hands and aimed it at the figure. The light hit it, and vanished. Not reflected, not absorbed, just gone. The beam stopped existing the moment it touched the thing. That's when it stepped forward. One slow, careful step. Snow didn't crunch beneath it. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't care where I was going. I just ran until my lungs burned and my legs went numb. I burst out of the trees onto the road and collapsed, gasping. Nothing followed me out. I made it to my sister's house half frozen and hysterical. She called the police. They searched the woods the next morning. They found my footprints. They stopped abruptly at the tree line. No return tracks. No signs of a struggle. No explanation for how I reached the road. The officer asked me something that still keeps me awake. "If you ran out of the woods," he said, "why are all your footprints facing inward?" I don't walk during snowstorms anymore, because I'm not sure it was chasing me. I think it was herding. The boy who didn't leave footprints. There are certain things in nature you don't get to summon. Lightning, shooting stars, and snowfall that arrives without warning. That night, snow wasn't in the forecast. I know that for a fact, because winter turns me obsessive. I check the weather constantly, sometimes every hour. So when I noticed the glow outside my window changing, I didn't understand why at first. Then I pulled the curtain back. Snow. Thick, quiet, unreal. It was already coating the ground, falling so softly it felt staged, like someone had pressed pause on the world. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat, got in my car, and drove to a nearby trailhead just outside town. The area isn't deep wilderness, but it's close enough. Dense trees, minimal traffic, At night, especially during winter, it feels abandoned. I parked and started walking. The snow absorbed every sound. No wind, no animals, just the faint crunch of my boots and my own breathing. After about 20 minutes, I stopped, satisfied with how far I'd gone. That's when I heard it. A child's voice. "Hi." I froze. My brain rejected it immediately. There shouldn't have been anyone out there, let alone a kid. I stood still, listening, telling myself it was just my imagination filling the silence. Then it came again. "Hi." The unsettling part wasn't just what I heard. It was that I couldn't tell where it came from. The sound felt scattered, like it was bouncing between the trees. I turned in a slow circle. Nothing. I decided to head back. Before I could take more than a step, the voice spoke again. "Up here. Silly." I looked up without thinking. A boy was sitting on a tree branch. He looked around 8 or 9 years old, bundled in winter clothes. He was perched casually, legs dangling, at least 20 feet above the ground. The lowest branch was far too high for a child to climb, especially in the snow. Strangely, seeing him made me feel calmer. At least now I knew where the voice was coming from. I walked closer. That's when I noticed something wrong. There were no footprints, not around the tree, not leading toward it, not leading away. Snow had been falling for nearly an hour, meaning if he climbed that tree, he did it before the snowfall, and somehow stayed there the entire time. The tree was straight, smooth, no branches low enough to grab. He waved at me. I asked him how he got up there. He smiled. Too wide, too stiff. "It's a secret." Then he stood up on the branch. "Watch this." Before I could react, he leaned backward and fell. I screamed. He dropped at least 30 feet, landing flat on his back with a sound that turned my stomach. I ran toward him, already bracing myself for what I was about to see. But before I reached him, he stood up. Not slowly, not painfully, instantly. Then he laughed and ran into the woods. I don't know why I chased him. I should have run the other way. I always would have. But something about that moment hijacked my instincts. I followed his footprints through the snow. As I ran, I heard him laughing, high-pitched, unhinged, echoing from different directions at once. It felt like a game to him. As I passed a tree, something slammed into my back. I hit the ground hard. He was on top of me. His fingernails clawed at my neck and shoulders, tearing skin. He was screaming now, but the sound wasn't human. I fought blindly, grabbing whatever I could, and somehow managed to throw him off. He hit the ground, popped back up, and ran deeper into the forest, still laughing. This time, I didn't follow. My hands were covered in blood. The cuts on my neck weren't deep, but there was far too much of it. I wrapped my hat tightly around my throat and stumbled back toward the trailhead. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up in an ambulance. The police searched the area while I was in the hospital. When they came to question me, they seemed uncomfortable. They told me they followed my footprints. Only mine. There was no second set, no signs of a child, no disturbance in the snow besides my own path. Days later, I went back. Fresh snow had buried everything. I searched for hours. Nothing. No tree marks, no tracks, no evidence anyone else had ever been there. I still think about that boy whenever it snows unexpectedly. And every time, the same thought returns. If he wasn't human, why did he want me to follow him? And worse, what happens when someone else does? See the snowstorm that followed me home. Snowstorms where I grew up were normal, but that night the snow felt personal. I was 19, home alone for winter break. My parents were visiting relatives out of state, and I had the house to myself for over a week. On the 6th night, the storm hit hard, harder than anything I'd seen before. By afternoon, there was nearly a foot of snow on the ground. By evening, the roads were gone. No plows, no cars, no sound. The power flickered once, then stayed on. The Wi-Fi didn't. By 7 p.m., boredom started eating at me. No internet, no games, nothing but silence and the sound of wind scraping against the house. That's when I had what I still consider one of the dumbest ideas of my life. I decided to walk to my friend Ryan's house. It was about 1.5 miles away. Normally a quick drive. On foot, in a blizzard, stupid. But I convinced myself it'd be fine. I layered up, texted him that I was on my way, and stepped outside. The world looked unreal. Streetlights turned the snow into glowing static. Every house was dark. No footprints except mine. The storm had passed, but the aftermath was eerie, like everything had been abandoned mid-life. Halfway there, the road cut through a wooded stretch. No houses, just trees and empty lots. That's when I saw headlights ahead. A snowplow. It was moving slowly toward me. Relief washed over me until it suddenly swerved hard, like the driver had panicked and disappeared straight into the trees. I heard a heavy crunch, then silence. I ran. The snow was deep, slowing every step, but adrenaline pushed me forward. When I reached the spot, I followed the tire tracks into the woods. The plow had slammed headfirst into a tree, headlights on, engine still running, driver's seat empty, passenger seat empty, no blood, no broken glass, no footprints leading away. I stood there too long, trying to make sense of it, until my gut turned cold. I needed to leave. As I backed away, I heard a man's voice behind me. "Help, please." I froze. Every instinct screamed, "Don't turn around." I started walking faster, then running. Behind me, the voice called out again, closer this time, way closer than it should have been. I didn't look back. I ran the rest of the way to Ryan's house, pounding on the door like my life depended on it. When his mom opened the door, she just stared at me. I must have looked feral, snow-covered, shaking, gasping for air. The police were called. Later that night, they told us something that made my stomach drop. They hadn't found a plow. They hadn't found tire tracks. They hadn't found anything. According to them, no vehicle had ever been on that road. I slept on Ryan's couch that night. I didn't dream, but I didn't sleep either. To this day, whenever I hear snowplows during a storm, I wait for the sound to stop, because I'm terrified that one night, it will. The night the snow watched me. Snow has always felt comforting to me. When it falls, the world grows quiet, like it's listening instead of speaking. That night, the snow came without warning. The forecast had promised clear skies, but by the time I noticed, the ground outside my window was already white. I didn't plan to go out, I just felt pulled. I drove to a small trail near my house, one that cuts through a thick stretch of forest. It was late, close to midnight, and the place was empty. No cars, no lights, just snow drifting down in slow, deliberate flakes. I walked deeper than I meant to, stopping only when the silence felt too heavy. That's when I heard it. "Hey!" A child's voice. It didn't sound scared. It didn't sound lost. It sounded playful. I turned in circles, my heart pounding, but I saw no one. The snow around me was untouched except for my own footprints. I told myself it was my imagination, until the voice spoke again. "Why won't you look up?" I did. A boy sat on a high tree branch far above where any child should be able to climb. He wore winter clothes and smiled down at me. His smile was wrong, too stiff, like it didn't belong on his face. There were no footprints beneath the tree. I asked him how he got up there. He laughed softly and said, "I don't walk." Before I could respond, he leaned backward and fell. I screamed as his body hit the snow with a sickening sound. I ran toward him, expecting the worst, but he stood up instantly, unharmed, and sprinted into the forest, laughing. Against every instinct, I followed. His footprints appeared ahead of me, leading deeper into the trees. Then they stopped, right beside mine. Something slammed into my back, knocking me face first into the snow. I felt hands claw at my neck, fingers digging in with impossible strength. I fought blindly, screaming until I managed to throw whatever it was off me. When I looked up, I was alone. Blood soaked my gloves. Panic took over. I don't remember how I got back to my car. I woke up in a hospital. The police told me they searched the forest and found only one set of footprints. Mine. No child. No signs of a struggle. Nothing. Weeks later, during another heavy snowfall, I stood at my bedroom window, unable to sleep. That's when I saw him. A man stood in my yard, barefoot in the snow, wearing a short-sleeved shirt. His skin was dark purple from the cold. He smiled up at my window. The same smile. I blinked, and he was gone. The snow outside was perfectly smooth. No footprints, not even his. He wasn't cold enough to be human. Snow has always felt unreal to me, like the world temporarily forgets how to make noise. That night it came without warning. One moment I was reading in my room, the next, flakes were pouring down so thick they blurred the streetlights outside. I didn't check the weather. I didn't tell anyone. I just put on my jacket and walked. I lived near a wooded stretch that connected to a highway. In daylight it was nothing special. At night, under fresh snow, it felt untouched, like no one had ever been there before me. Every step I took left a perfect print behind. I remember thinking how satisfying it looked, a single trail cutting through endless white. Halfway through the woods, I noticed something ahead. A person. He stood directly in the middle of the path, about 30 yards away, facing me. At first, I thought he was another walker who'd gotten caught in the storm. Then my brain caught up. He was wearing shorts. No jacket, no gloves. Just a thin t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers, standing completely still in a full-blown blizzard. Snow clung to his bare arms, yet he didn't shiver. He smiled, wide and stiff, like his face wasn't used to making expressions. I stopped walking. We stared at each other for several seconds. The silence felt heavy, wrong. Then, without warning, he screamed. Not a word, just a raw animal sound. And he charged. I ran. Snow swallowed my legs with every step, but I didn't dare look back. I could hear him behind me, moving too fast for the depth of the snow, his breathing uneven, almost excited. My lungs burned, my boots slipped. I thought I was going to fall, and if I did, I knew I wouldn't get back up. I burst out of the woods onto the road and didn't stop running until I reached my house. My parents thought I was overreacting. Probably just a drunk, my dad said. But something about that explanation didn't sit right. Drunks get cold. Drunks leave footprints. That night, long after everyone went to sleep, I heard tapping at my window. Slow, deliberate. I pulled the curtain back. He was there. His skin was purple now, stretched tight across his face. His smile was wider, cracked at the corners. Frost coated his eyebrows and beard, but his eyes were wide open, alert, watching me. My dad chased him outside, but by the time the police arrived, the yard was empty. No footprints, none leading away, none coming toward the house. Just mine, frozen solid in the snow. To this day, I don't know what he was. All I know is this. When it snows unexpectedly, I stay inside now. Because some things don't feel the cold the way we do. The snow copies your footsteps. I learned something strange the winter I turned 20. Snow doesn't just record where you've been. Sometimes it practices. That night I couldn't sleep. The power flickered on and off, and outside snow was falling so hard it erased sound itself. No wind, no cars, just that soft, endless hush pressing against the walls. Around midnight I noticed something odd. My driveway light was on. I never leave it on. I looked out the window and saw a single trail of footprints leading from the road to the edge of my yard. They stopped abruptly, right beneath my bedroom window. No return prints. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone had checked the house during the outage. I closed the curtain and went back to bed. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps. Not outside. Inside the house. Slow, careful. Each step spaced evenly, like whoever was walking was trying not to rush. I froze, staring at my bedroom door. The footsteps stopped just outside it. Then, nothing. After a long, shaking minute, I worked up the courage to open the door. The hallway was empty, but the carpet was damp. Wet footprints, bare feet, led down the hall and stopped at the back door. I locked it and didn't sleep the rest of the night. Morning came with silence and sunlight reflecting off untouched snow. I checked outside. The footprints from the road were still there. So were another set. They matched mine perfectly. Same shoe size, same stride, same slight inward tilt of my left foot. They started at my back door. They led straight into the woods behind my house. I followed them, against my better judgment. The trees swallowed sound the deeper I went. After about 10 minutes, I realized something was wrong. The footprints ahead of me were getting clearer. Mine behind me were already filling in with snow. That didn't make sense. Then I noticed something worse. The prints ahead weren't just mine anymore. They were correcting themselves. Each step straighter, more confident, like whatever was walking was learning how to move properly. I stopped. The footprints stopped too. I took one step back. The prints ahead took one step forward. That's when I heard breathing, right behind my ear. Not cold, not warm, just present. I ran. I didn't look back until I burst out of the woods and slammed my back door shut. The footprints ended right at the tree line. That night I set up cameras. At 2:17 a.m., motion alerts went off. The footage showed something stepping into frame. It looked like me. Same height, same clothes I'd worn earlier, same walk. Except its face never turned toward the camera. It just stood there watching my house. Learning. The next morning there were footprints circling the building. Only one set. And they weren't mine anymore. Now when it snows, I don't leave the house. Because if you walk long enough in fresh snow, eventually something figures out how to walk like you. I sat frozen in the driver's seat as the traffic crawled forward, snow smearing the windshield in uneven streaks. The message on my phone faded as the signal died, leaving only my reflection staring back at me, pale, wide-eyed, breathing too fast. When I finally forced myself to raise my head, the footprints were gone. I told myself that was the end of it. Weeks passed, then months. Winter loosened its grip and the snow melted away. I started sleeping better. I almost convinced myself the thing I'd encountered was tied to snow alone. Some seasonal hallucination, some rare psychological break. I was wrong. It started with reflections. Mirrors began to feel delayed. I'd move my head, and my reflection would follow just a fraction of a second too late. Sometimes when I brushed my teeth, I'd swear my reflection wasn't looking at me, its eyes drifting just slightly past my shoulder. I stopped using mirrors altogether. Then came the footprints again. Not outside, inside. I noticed them one morning leading from my bathroom to my bedroom. Bare feet, no tread, no socks, just pale impressions on the dust-coated floor. They ended right beside my bed. That night I woke to the sound of breathing. It wasn't mine. It was slow, careful, curious, like someone trying to mimic how a human breathes without fully understanding it. I lay perfectly still, eyes locked on the dark corner of my room. Something stood there. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was smiling. "You ran farther this time," it said softly. Its voice kept changing. Child, man, something older than either. The words felt wrong in the air, like they were being spoken inside my head instead of aloud. "What do you want?" I whispered. It stepped closer. The room grew colder with every movement, frost creeping across the window despite it being early autumn. "I want you to remember," it said. "You looked at me. That's how it works." My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Against all logic, I glanced at it. A photo had been sent from an unknown number. It was me, standing in my bedroom, taken from the corner where the thing was standing. I screamed and lunged for the light switch. The bulb exploded the instant I flipped it, plunging the room into darkness again. The cold vanished. The breathing stopped. By morning, everything looked normal. No footprints, no frost, no messages. Except one thing. On the inside of my bedroom door, carved deeply into the wood, were dozens of tally marks. Hundreds. And beneath them, a sentence I still see every time I close my eyes. "You are not the first." I've since learned there are others, people who hear voices in snowstorms, people who follow footprints that don't belong to anyone, people who swear something watches them from trees, rooftops, reflections. Most stop talking about it. Some disappear. And a few, just a few, are found frozen solid far from any forest, barefoot, smiling. Winter is coming again. Snowfall has always felt sacred to me. The way it muffles the world, turning chaos into silence. It's like nature holding its breath. That night the storm came without warning. One moment the road outside my apartment was bare asphalt, and the next it was buried under white, swallowing streetlights and sound alike. I couldn't sit still. I threw on my coat and boots and drove to the old service road near the reservoir. No houses, no traffic, just trees and snow. The walk started peacefully. Every step crunched softly beneath my boots, the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. After 10 minutes, I realized something felt off. Not fear, awareness. Like I was being noticed. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped. They stopped. I turned around. The road was empty, untouched except for my own tracks stretching behind me. No wind, no animals. Just silence so deep it rang in my ears. Then a voice spoke. "Hey." It sounded young. Too young to be out there alone. The voice came again, closer this time. "Wait up." My heart began to pound. I scanned the trees, expecting to see a kid step out, maybe lost. But instead, I saw movement above me. A boy stood on a broken traffic sign, balanced easily despite the ice. He wore no coat, no gloves. His bare skin was blue. "How are you not cold?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled, and something about it was wrong. Too wide, too stretched, like his face didn't quite understand how smiling worked. "You didn't see me," he said. "You weren't supposed to." Before I could respond, he stepped off the sign. He didn't fall. He dropped straight down and landed on his feet without a sound. Then he ran. I chased him without thinking, panic driving my legs forward. His footprints appeared and vanished at random, sometimes leading straight into trees, sometimes stopping altogether. His laughter echoed through the woods, bouncing in ways that made no sense. Suddenly something grabbed my jacket and yanked me backward. I slammed into the snow, gasping. When I scrambled up, no one was there. My neck burned. I touched it and pulled my hand away, bloody. I don't remember getting back to my car. I only remember sitting in the driver's seat, engine running, snow piling onto the windshield as if trying to bury me. The police said there was no evidence anyone else had been there. No other footprints, no reports of missing children. But sometimes, during heavy snowfall, I hear footsteps pacing outside my apartment, always stopping right at my door. And every time I check, the snow is untouched, except for one set of bare footprints, leading nowhere. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. The heater clicking on, the refrigerator humming, the wind brushing against the windows. I kept replaying the boy's smile in my head, the way his feet hit the ground without a sound, the impossible way his footprints appeared and vanished. Sometime after 3 a.m., the power went out. The lights cut instantly, plunging my apartment into darkness so thick it felt physical. Outside, the snowfall continued, glowing faintly in the orange streetlight across the road. That's when I heard it. Slow, deliberate, coming from my front door. I sat up in bed, frozen. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. There was no balcony near my door, no reason anyone or anything should be standing there. Then the tapping changed. Scratch, long fingernails dragging gently across the wood. "I know you saw me," a voice whispered from the other side. It wasn't a child anymore. It sounded like several voices speaking through the same mouth, layered and wrong. My chest tightened as I reached for my phone, but there was no signal, no service, no emergency calls. The handle began to turn. I don't remember deciding to move. I only remember slamming my bedroom door shut and shoving my dresser against it. The scratching stopped instantly. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then laughter filled the apartment. It came from everywhere at once. Inside the walls, beneath the floor, right behind my ears. I screamed and covered my head, squeezing my eyes shut like a terrified child. When the laughter finally stopped, the silence was worse. I stayed like that until morning. The power came back on at sunrise. Snow buried my car completely, forcing me to stay home. I convinced myself it had all been a stress-induced hallucination. That's what the police would say. That's what made sense. Until I checked my door. They were marks carved deep into the wood. 5 long grooves, uneven, as if made by something with too many joints in its fingers. Beneath them, etched carefully, was a single sentence: "Next time, don't run." I moved out a week later, new city, new apartment, no forests nearby. I stopped walking at night altogether. I avoided snow whenever I could. Years passed. Then last winter it happened again. I was stuck in traffic during a sudden storm when I noticed something in my rearview mirror. Bare footprints. Not on the road, on the roof of my car. They moved slowly toward the windshield, and just before my phone lost signal, a message appeared on my screen, typed by no one. "You're closer to the woods than you think." I still don't know what followed me home that first night, but I know one thing for certain: it doesn't age, and it never forgets.